Okay, so one of these things today is going to be a review for you, and then one of the things is going to be new. Which word up there do you think is going to be review for you? Circumference. Yeah, you guys learned your circumference formula quite a while ago. So circumference, if I asked you to put that definition in your own words, what would you say? I heard perimeter of a circle, I heard the outside of a circle. Yeah, all the same thing. The distance around a circle, right? So circumference, go ahead and write this definition either on the back of your note sheet or on the front of your note sheet. We won't worry about journals today, but go ahead and write that down. Circumference is the distance around a circle, the outside of a circle. So just jot that down either at the top of your note sheet or on the back of your note sheet. Okay, and then there's two formulas that work for circumference, and we'll go ahead and write both of them down. The first one is not pi r squared. Pi r squared is area, which we'll get to tomorrow. But circumference is 2 pi r. So that's the one that should probably look familiar to you. C stands for circumference. And r stands for what? Right. Okay. Now, the second way of writing 2 pi r comes from the fact that 2 times r, 2 times the radius, 2 radii put together is really 1 what? Diameter. So the other way of writing it is that pi times d, but it's the same exact formula because 2 times r is where the d comes from. 2 radii is a diameter. So 2 different ways to write it, but they both get you the circumference. Now, sometimes they ask you for the radius or give you the radius, and then sometimes they give you the diameter or ask for the diameter. So that'll kind of tell you which formula makes more sense to use. You'll use the 2 pi r one when you're given or asked for the radius, and you'll probably want to use the pi d one when you're given or asked for the diameter. However, it never matters which one you use, because if you're given a radius, you can always find the diameter, and if you're given a diameter, you can always find the radius. So it doesn't really matter too much which one you use. Okay? You all have that formula written down in the bold where it says formula for circumference? Cool. Here we go. 4 quick little problems here. One of each scenario that you would possibly get. The first one says, find the circumference if the radius is 9. So since they give you the radius, you want to use the formula involving radius, the 2 pi r formula. And you could use the pi d formula and then just multiply 9 times 2, but that's what we're going to do in a second anyway. So our circumference here is 2 pi times 9. All you do is plug in 9 for the radius. If you don't have a calculator, will you grab one really quick from the front, quickly and quietly, so it doesn't take us very long? And then I'm going to show you 2 different ways to write this equation, or write this answer. Okay? You can leave the answer exact. Now, when I say leave it exact, we can take 9 times 2, which is 18, and then just leave the pi alone and just leave it as 18 pi. I'd be okay with that. Or you can take 18 times pi. Now, pi rounded is 3.14, but I would prefer that you not use 3.14. I would prefer that you use the actual pi button. So if you have one of these TI 30 calculators, your pi button is right here on the left side above the ln. So you would hit 18 and then, oh my goodness gracious, times, and then you would hit times and then hit the pi button and hit equals, and you get 56 point something or other, 5/4, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Hold on, let's just make sure everyone gets their decimal first. If you're not getting that decimal, I need to show you where it's at. Where's your calculator? Put your phone in your backpack. Find it. pi r, you just hit 18. Okay, so we get 15 point something or other, right? That'll be the other way of writing it. Or not 15, 50, how about 56.5, that's fine, centimeters, or 5.5 is fine too. God, that got real sloppy really fast, hold up. 18 pi or 56.5 centimeters, there we go. Okay, those are your two different options for answers. Now, what happens if they give you the circumference and they ask for the radius? You're going to use the exact same formula, 2 pi r. However, they're giving you the circumference, so that's what's going to get plugged in for C, and then you're being asked for the radius, so we'll leave r alone. Okay? And two different ways to solve for r here. Now remember, if you don't have any signs between 2 pi and r, what's the function that's really happening right there? Multiplication. So how do you undo multiplication? You divide. So we're going to divide by the 2 and by the pi. Let me explain. There's like 3 different ways to do this. Okay, here's what you're looking at. R is 26 divided by 2 pi. However, you cannot type in 26 divided by 2 pi unless you put 2 pi in parentheses, because otherwise your calculator reads it as 26 divided by 2 times pi, which is wrong. So there's one way to type it in. You can hit 26 divided by and then hit your parentheses and hit 2 pi, and you should get 4 point something or other. Yeah, 4.13. Okay. Another way of doing this is you can literally hit 26 divided by 2 divided by pi, like all separately, and that would also work and get you the 4.1. Or you could type in 2 times pi and get a decimal, and then type in like 26 divided by that decimal, whatever it may be. So there's 3 different ways to type it in. Whichever way you want to type it in is up to you. It's personal preference, but you got to pick a method here and know how to find your answer. So our answer should be about 4.1, any way that you type it in. Meters. And it's meters because radius is a segment, so it's a unit of length. Okay, these 3 things on the right are just 3 different ways to type it in. You don't need to do all 3. Just pick one and go with it. The last 2, they give you a diameter. So we're going to use, instead of the 2 pi r equation, it would make more sense here to use the pi d equation. This one, they say find the circumference, so that'll be your variable, and then the diameter is 5. So pi times 5, bless you. We can write that as 5 pi, or 5 times the pi button is about 15.7 inches. And make sure, guys, you have to make sure that you're getting that on your calculator, because if you don't get it now, you're not going to get it for your homework, and you'll bomb that, and then you won't get it for your test, and you'll bomb that, right? So you have to make sure that you're, like, let me type in 5 times pi and make sure that I'm getting what Miss Kelly is getting, because otherwise you don't know how the calculator works, which is not good. So everyone should be practicing these. And then the last one, this one, they give you the circumference of 17, so that'll get plugged in for C, and they ask you for the diameter. And again, you could use the 2 pi r formula, it's fine, but then you'll find the radius and you'll have to end up multiplying it by 2 in the end anyway. So, I guess it's just up to you. Divide by pi. Now again, I'd rather you use the actual pi button than 3.14, just because it's approximating right away, and I'd rather you get the answer as exact as you possibly can. Andrew says 5.4. I got 5.411268065. So everyone type it in. Make sure you're getting that decimal, because if you're not, we got a problem. 5.4-ish. 8. So always pay attention to whether or not they're asking or giving you the radius or the diameter. You can find either one based on what you have, but like if they wanted the radius, I could just take that and cut it in half at this point. Questions on circumference? Okay, that should all be review for you. Here's the new stuff. Arc length. Let's get this written down. I told you guys that this was going to come up this chapter. Arc length is different than arc measure. Arc measure is what you did last chapter with the degrees stuff, like central angle and then arcs. Arc length is different. Arc length is a piece of the circumference. So if you think about it this way, arc measure is like how far something rotates, like how many degrees it's rotating. Arc length is like if I cut out that red piece of the segment, or red piece of the circle, and then lay it up against a ruler, how long is it? That's what length is. So arc measure is degrees, how far it's rotating, and then arc length is going to be like if I cut it out and measure it against a ruler, how long is it? Arc measure is always degrees. Arc length is always a unit of length, like feet, inches, centimeters. Okay? So here's the proportion you're going to write in the middle of your yellow sheet. We're going to make it a little bit different than this one. And I do this a little bit different than Mr. Milks. So if you do your homework with somebody in Mr. Milks' class, just be aware that I do it a little bit different than him. On the top left corner will always be the arc length. Okay, so like how long is this piece of the circle here? If I line it up against a ruler. On the bottom is always going to be a full length of a circle. Now a full length of a circle, the length all the way around the circle is also the circumference. So the circumference goes on the bottom. And I'm just going to make myself a little note here that 2 pi r is the circumference. And then on the other side of the proportion, we're going to look at degrees. On the bottom is going to be a full circle. Full circles are always 360 degrees. And then on the top is that arc measure in degrees. And there's your proportion. Now, this proportion makes a lot of sense because here's what you're looking at on both sides. On both sides of the proportion, you are comparing a piece of the circle to the entire circle. Piece of the circle to the entire circle. The left side is all length, like units of length or distance. And the right side is all degrees, like how far it's rotating. Okay? But in both cases, you are comparing a piece of the circle to the entire circle. The entire length of a circle is 2 pi r. The entire measurement of a circle is 360. So in either case, it's piece of the circle over entire circle. Piece of the circle over the entire circle. The left side's always length. The right side's always degrees. Because you have to match your unit of measurement. Length on one side, degrees over degrees on the other. Okay? Okay. Now, the one thing in this proportion that never changes is this one right here, this little guy here. The 360, that will never change. There's no variable there. First proportion. 360 is always in the bottom right corner, every single time. Now, you have to keep degrees over degrees. So I always remember if 360 is in the bottom right corner, the number on top of 360 is the arc measurement in degrees. So what number do you see in degrees for the arc measure? 60. That'll go on top of 360. Degrees have to stick with degrees. They have to all be on one side together. Okay? We're looking for arc length. In our proportion, arc length was the top left corner. So that'll be our variable, x. I'll just call x. You can call it whatever you want. That's what you're looking for. And then it's a piece of the circle over the entire circle. So we're going to compare a piece of the circumference to the entire circumference. Circumference is 2 pi r. What's my r here? 8. So they could give you the entire circumference, but most often they just give you the radius, and you have to find the circumference. So then from here, we're going to cross multiply. We did this a lot in chapter 8 where you cross multiply with two ratios. Okay, one of the sides will be pretty simple. 360 times x is 360x. That one's not too bad. And then I'm going to write all this out individually. 60 times 2 pi 8. We're going to take 60 times 2 times pi times 8. That's what this cross is right here. 60 times 2 times pi times 8. Darren, you with us? Okay, let's clean up the right side a little bit. Now, personal preference, because I'm kind of a math geek, is I like to keep everything as exact as I possibly can until the very, very end. So I don't like to approximate too soon. So on the right side, I'm going to go ahead and just multiply the constants together, and then I'll get to pi in a second. So on the left, we still have 360x. Let's go ahead and multiply 60 times 2 times 8. 60 times 2 times 8. 120 times 8 is 960. And then that pi is in there. 960 pi. And then how do I get x by itself? Divide by 360. And so now I can hit 960 times pi and get a decimal, but now it's a little more exact than it would have been up there if I would have rounded right away. So type in 960 times pi, and you can type it all in at once. I'm not going to tick off for that. I just like to keep it as exact as I can until the end. So 960 times pi, everyone type that in, 960 times pi. Make sure that you're getting 3015.928947.
Yep.
960 times pi should be 3015.928947. And then hit divided by, oh, I cleared on accident. You don't have to clear it. You just hit straight divided by 360 and you should be getting about 8.4. Huh? I was just going to get there. So when you label it, arc length is a unit of length. So what unit of measurement's in the problem? What is it? I can't hear you, any of you guys. Centimeters. You only put it in degrees if they ask for arc measure. Okay, let's go to the next one. Next one, so you're going to use the same proportion this entire time, but they're asking you for different pieces of it. Next one, the 360 never changes. Never, ever, ever changes. And the number above 360, you got to keep degrees with degrees. You got to keep your units constant. So above 360 is the arc measure in degrees, which is what? 40. Okay. This time they ask you for the circumference. Now, the circumference we were writing as 2 pi r, but 2 pi r is the circumference. And so since they're not asking me for the radius, and I just want the entire circumference, I can go ahead and just write a c there. 2 pi r is what's in the formula, but 2 pi r is c. It's the same thing. And then above, question?
Would be just right next.
Yeah, x, whatever.
Wait, why don't you put 2 pi?
So you could put 2 pi r, it's a good question, right? Because that's what I have back here in the formula. But you don't need r, you don't need to get that specific. So I can just replace 2 pi r with c, because 2 pi r and c, the circumference, are the exact same thing. You could use 2 pi r and solve it for that, but what you would end up with in the end is the radius, not the circumference, so you'd have to end up plugging it back into the circumference formula. So you could do it that way. And then on top is the arc length, which is your 4.19. Okay, so from here, 40 times circumference, 40 times c is 40c. 360 times 4.19 is 1,508.4. Oh. And then divide by 40. And your circumference is 1508.4 divided by 40 is 37.71 inches, because it's a unit of length. So again, if you would have put 2 pi r, you would have been dividing by 40 times 2 pi, and then you would have gotten the r radius, and then you would have had to plug it back into the circumference formula to get the circumference, which is fine. It's just more work. Okay. And then the third one, arc measure. Okay, arc, now they don't distinctly write like arc measure here, but that's what the M stands for. So if you need to make yourself a note that the M stands for arc measure in degrees, then you might want to make yourself a note on your note sheet. M stands for arc measure in degrees. That's this right here. That's what we don't know right now. We don't have the degree measure right there. Okay, on the left side, what's the arc length of RS? 44. And then on the bottom left corner, we're not going to put 15.28, we're going to put the circumference. So the circumference is 2 times pi times the radius. So 2 times pi times the radius. And in years past, some people will get this number right away, like as a decimal, and then just put it right there. And you could do that if you wanted to. Like just right away get the circumference and plug it in the bottom left. I'm going to do this side first because it's a little bit easier. 44 times 360 is 15,840. And then on the right side, we've got x times 2 pi times 15.28. I'm going to go ahead and type all this in right now. I'm going to type in that circumference. So everyone should join me. 2 times pi times 15.28. Sorry, I messed up. 2 times pi times 15.28. Everyone should practice that in their calculators. 96.0070749. Yeah, so like 96 is fine. I'd be okay with that. X, that's where the X goes to. So again, this right here is where 96 came from just now. 2 times pi times 15.28. So then to get x by itself, divide by 96. And we get 165. And that is circumference, so that's a unit of length. No. We're looking for arc measure. Miss Kelly is wrong. Degrees, sorry. Oops. Okay, so, I mean, I feel like that's a little rude. Just interrupt me right in the middle of, like, teaching. Can we go to lunch? Go. So that's why I keep sitting down, just an FYI. All right, we're going to skip the middle one. The middle one here is just like the middle one on the first slide, okay? So we're going to skip that one for the sake of time. And then we're going to do number 3 because it has that third line in there and I don't want it to throw you off. And then we're going to do number 5. What is the one thing in the proportion that never changes? 360. It's always where?
On the bottom right.
Bottom right corner. Yep. And then the number above 360 has to also be in degrees. So what's the only number? Now, here's where you should be careful. Always pay attention to what arc they're asking about because, and like this one's okay, but sometimes they could give you like a different measure and then you need to find the measure first. But what's the arc measure of PQ? 75. So we're okay there. But if they had asked for like, QSP, you would have to do like 360 minus 75. All right. We're looking for the arc length. So that's the top left corner that I'll call X. And then on the back is your on the bottom of that is your circumference. 2 pi r. Now be careful here. This 9 is your entire diameter. So you can cut it in half if you want and then plug it into 2 pi r. Or remember, pi times d is the same as 2 pi r. Pi times d is the same as 2 pi r. If you cut 9 in half, you get 4.5, and then you could plug 4.5 into 2 pi 4.5, but you'd end up back with 9 pi again.
Is the top left always X?
No, only if they ask for arc length. multiply, we get 360x on the left, and then on the right, you'll be taking 75 times pi times 9. So go ahead and type that in. 75 times pi times 9 is 2120.6, or I'll just put 575. Now, if you were to type in 75 times 9 and then leave it exact, that's even better. Like if you wrote 675 pi and then divided by 360, even better. But it's okay if you don't do it that way. I know some people just really get thrown off by the pi, so if you just want to multiply right away and get rid of the pi, you certainly can. You could have even multiplied up here and taken pi times 9 and written that as a decimal right away. Written it as a decimal, rather. Okay? 2120.575 divided by 360 is about 5.89. Now this is arc length. So what unit of length are we working with on this problem? Yards? Questions on that one? Okay, we're going to skip the middle one because it's just like the middle one on the front, and we'll go to this one on the right. Okay, the 360 never changes. Above the 360 is arc measure in degrees. Degrees go with degrees, so what goes above 360? 150. On the left, we are looking for the radius here. Oh, arc length. The arc length is 10.5 feet. And we're looking for the radius. So this, to go back to Haley's question before lunch, like why don't we put 2 pi r there? If they ask you for just the full circumference, then you could just put like a C there, because you're asked for the full circumference. If you're asked for the radius, that's where you'd want to go ahead and put that 2 pi r, because we want r in the end. So we want r involved. Okay? Cross multiply, let's take care of this side first. What's 360 times 10.5?
Oh, 3,703.
Hold on, Nick was saying?
3,780.
Wait, what'd you say?
Okay. Guys, I still can't hear him. What?
3,780.
Thank you. Okay, on this side you get 150 times 2 pi r. Okay, so we can go ahead and type this in. I'd be okay with that. 150 times 2 pi. So that's, what, 300 times pi?
So
150 times 2 times pi, 942.4777. How about that?
oh yeah, okay, I'm good.
That number just came from 150 times 2, which is 300, times pi, which is the 942.4777. Divide by the 942.4777. And again, if you had left that as 300 pi, even better. And I'm getting approximately just 4 is good, close enough. And that's a unit of length, so what unit of measurement are we going to use here? Feet. Okay. Okay, so your homework is then the front page. I had just a couple people do this though. Can I borrow yours for a second? On like 5 and 6, for example. 5 and 6, when you use your proportion, you have to use 2 pi r. So like on number 5 where it has the 8, 8 is not the circumference. So make sure that you actually plug 8 into the circumference formula for that little bottom left corner of your proportion. All right. There you go. Hopefully you get it done in the next, however long you have, 12 minutes. Hold on, I heard that first. Avery, what? you have question homework? Let me get some first. Yep. Then we divide the pies and whole.
And your man would be fine.
Avery, is that yours? Yeah.
No, I'm not. I told you.
Okay, let's put phones down.
I didn't know it was clear.